6 months of protests in Iran and 6 months of atrocities against men, women, and children. A new report from Amnesty International details the horrific beatings, torture, and rape of protest detainees, even children as young as 12 years old. Joining us with more to discuss how the Ayatollah and other Iranian government officials are treating citizens who are demanding freedom in their country is Tahmineh Dehbozorgi. She fled Iran for the United States. She's now a law school student and speaker with the Dissident Project. Tahmineh, many of the atrocities detailed by Amnesty International are just too disturbing to mention here, but they include electric shocks to genitalia, hanging children by scarves tied around their necks, sodomizing boys and women with pipes. I mean, these are things told to Amnesty International by Iranians they've interviewed. So what are your sources inside Iran telling you?
Well, since 1979, Iran has been a dystopia. After 40 years of tyrannical rule, the Iranian Gen Z population is leading this fight against the Islamic Republic regime. They stand in front of bullets and they raise their voice for freedom. And I hear very horrific details about what is going on in the country as well. As you mentioned, there are reports of poisoning girls in high schools. There are reports of raping and beating young girls and boys in prisons. And these are just like 14-year-old, 16-year-old, and 18-year-old children. They're not adults. And all they did was to go out and demand freedom. They want a better life. They want access to internet. They want economic freedom. And they want this regime to be gone.
The government says it's released more than 80,000 people. It's giving amnesty to more than 22,000 detainees. So what do you make of all that?
Well, there are two sides of this issue. First of all, the Iranian officials are not credible sources. They have lied, they're compulsive liars. They have used like false data in the past. However, on the other hand, if we trust this number and say that they are correct, that shows how big the scale of this protest has been, that they have released thousands of people and there are still many more in prisons based on the information that we have received from sources in Iran.
Is that what all younger Iranians are demanding, more freedom, or is their goal regime change?
You know, a few years ago, young Iranians were demanding some reforms, but then we realized that it's just not going to work out because the fundamentals of this government is just against human rights. So right now, the Iranian people are no longer asking for reform. The only solution to finally have a happy life and prosperity with economic freedom and social liberties is for the Islamic Republic to just be wiped off from the face of Iran. And we want a free, democratic Iran very soon. And this is what the Iranian young people and also even older generations are demanding. And that's why we're seeing such mass protests, not just in Iran, but also across Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, New York, and every major city in Europe.
Yeah, a lot of Iranians are very active in the U.S. You wrote an opinion column that appeared in the Orange County Register when the protests started last September. Now, 6 months have passed. A lot of Americans wonder, what is our government doing about it? So how should President Biden and Congress respond? The United States doesn't have a very good track record of helping Iranian freedom fighters.
So the Iranian people, one thing that mostly concerns them is that the Biden administration goes back to nuclear talks with the Islamic Republic regime, because that will allow the Islamic Republic to use leverages against the U.S. government and get more access to frozen funds and dollars that U.S. currently blocks. And access to that money allows the Islamic regime to fund its terrorist activities, not just in Iran, but also in other countries. So the Iranian people are very scared of the Biden administration going back to nuclear talks. The other thing is that members of Congress, they represent over 1 million Iranians in the United States who are American citizens. They have to listen to their constituents. They have to listen to them, to their demands, which is, we don't want to go back to a nuclear deal. We want the U.S. government to talk to its allies and ensure that they also fire the diplomats from their countries. They have to cut ties with the Islamic regime because this government does not represent the Iranian people. They have no legitimacy, and the world has to stop treating them as a legitimate ruler of Iran.
And quickly, what do you think is going to happen now? Will these continue, or are they going to protests fizzle out?
Well, the economy is imploding. The situation in the country is not stable. And the Gen Z is very motivated. They are fighting. They know what they want. This is different from anything we've seen before. The scale is much larger. So I am very hopeful that if the Biden administration and also other Western countries stand with the Iranian people, we will see change very soon.
Okay, Dissident Project speaker Tahmineh Dehbozorgi, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.